Hey everybody, Troy here. Just want to take you through the mini pedal board that I just got done building. It took me a few months to get through this just because, time, didn't have the time, and kept kind of changing my mind about how I wanted to approach it and what pedals I wanted to use. And so the way it started was I was approached by a good friend of mine to do some prison tours this summer to minister to the guys there. And we're going to be doing some secular music. It's not going to be worship stuff, but I wanted to make a board that could be used for worship stuff, but also tackle this secular music that I'm going to be kind of having to practice and play for these guys in the summertime. But I needed something a lot smaller than what I take to church. I mean, the board that I use for church has like 16 or 17 pedals on it. It's huge. It weighs a ton. And when you go in these prisons, you have to check in like every single cable, every single power lead, everything. So I needed something that was going to be more simple from a setup standpoint, and this is what I came up with. The way I approached it was needed at least two drives, so a heavier overdrive and then a lighter, kind of more edge of breakup, a little bit more than that, overdrive pedal, compressor. I like to have compressor, volume pedal if I'm going to use it in a worship context, of course, and then delay and reverb. Had to kind of scrap some of the special stuff that I like to have, like trem and octave. Those are kind of, and vibrato, of course, are kind of the like ancillary pedals that if I have my perfect pedal board, that's what I have available just in case the moment hits and I want to use something like that. So I just stripped it down and just went with the core on a pedal train Metro 16, so very tiny pedal board. And it's all powered by one of the Strymon Ohio, which is how the guy at Vintage King said it. I don't know if that's right. Strymon Ohio power supplies. It's tiny. It's like this big. I'll show you a picture of it underneath the board. I had to make a small modification to the pedal board itself. So when you look at it, you can see, oops. I'll explain that later too. I put these little rubber feet on there to make the pedal board kind of stand up a bit more to fit the power supply underneath. So you can see how small it is, how tight the wiring is. It's pretty tight in there. I'm not the best wire guy in the world, but my stuff always works. It just doesn't look great. But that's the bottom of the supply. What fell off when I picked it up there was my little Lego pedal riser I had to make for my reverb pedal. That's kind of funny, but I'll explain a little more about that later. But that's the board. I mean, it's really, really small. It basically fits in the bottom left-hand corner of my big one. But the iterations I went through to get there was the major changes I made was in the overdrive section. I just could not settle on something. Finally, I stuck with the Morning Glory as my kind of like little bit over the top drive to give it just a little bit of boost, a little bit of overdrive. I always had the Angry Charlie sitting there for the heavier stuff, but the Morning Glory it beat out everything else that I tried in that spot, and I always seem to come back to it. And then the delay pedal had some kind of battles with myself about what I wanted to do there. In the end, I just ended up buying another timeline and putting it on there. Didn't like the Source Audio Nemesis, which is what I tried earlier. Didn't like that at all from the setup standpoint. And then the New Neighbor reverb pedal took the place of the Strymon Blue Sky, which I haven't met too many Strymon pedals I didn't like, but for purposes of this board, I did not like that pedal. So I went with the New Neighbor. It's incredibly versatile, and it's small too for what you get out of it. So let's just jump in. I'll walk you through each of the pedals, kind of the purpose behind them for this context, how they sound, and hope you enjoy it. So let's jump into the signal chain here. The first pedal in the chain is the Exotic SP compressor. I have it set up on the low compression mode and with a pretty big volume push going into the front end of the Kemper to get me that breakup tone that I like as my just bass tone. So the unaffected signal or tone without the SP compressors with a compressor. So as you can see, it adds quite a bit of push to the front end and a lot of sustain. But what's nice about the way that I like the way I run that is I can back down the volume on my guitar here. And it's nice and clean-ish, I guess. And that's about 5 on the volume. If I take it back to about 3, it's clean as a whistle. From the compressor goes into the Angry Charlie, which is over here. And since I'm using this pedal board, I won't be playing it probably as a main rig at church or anything like that, but maybe if I go play at a different church and I don't have quite as much ground to cover, and especially in these prison tours that I'll be doing, I'll need to be covering some different ground in terms of secular music that I don't typically do, but in the context that we're going to be in, it's going to be something that's necessary to grab the attention of the folks that we're playing to and hoping to minister to. But I picked the Angry Charlie because it has an incredible amount of gain on tap, so I can cover a ton of ground with volume knob changes. You can see the gain that I had the drive knob hardly cracked at all, and it just has a crazy amount of gain. So let me play like just an E chord. But then roll the volume back. So this is to about 6. Now to about 3. And then back all the way up. So obviously it does the rock and roll stuff like crazy well, but it also gives you that sort of classic rock tone if you roll the volume back a little bit, and then say you add some delay, and it does the worship kind of stuff pretty well too. So that's a nice overdriven tone for worship. It's a little heavy, but I think if I ever needed to take it somewhere, I'd probably just back the gain down a little more if I was playing at a church, and that would be my kind of second stage overdriven tone. So next in the chain is the JHS Morning Glory, one of my kind of go-to overdrive pedals. I'd have this on probably every board I ever build. That's last in the overdrive chain because I like it to affect the overall signal and to be able to lift the volume. So I always place it last or toward the end of the overdrive chain. And that's going to handle kind of like the more transparent style overdrive where it's not doing a lot to the EQ, maybe some bluesy type stuff, then obviously it fits really well in worship genre. So then that sounds like this. And then back down the volume. So what I like about the Morning Glory is that it has that wiry thing going on. You can still hear the strings of the guitar. It's glassy, almost, I use the word transparent, but I feel like it actually adds some high end, which I like a lot. It keeps things kind of popping out in the mix, but in a good way. And the overdrive feels like it almost sits underneath your signal instead of on top of it, which, again, I think the pedal is just genius because of that. And, you know, you've heard the pedal before, but with some delay and whatnot. So it's just got that super glassy tone. Really like in a mix, it sits really well. By itself, it can be a little harsh, but in the mix, that's going to sit in nicely. All right, so next in the chain is the Dunlop Volume X Mini, and this thing is awesome. I was really surprised with the quality of the sweep. It doesn't feel like a toy. It doesn't feel like they threw this together as an afterthought. Like, it's actually functional, which obviously is important, but the fact that it's not a novelty made me really happy. So we'll just run some swells here real quick and show you how nice the sweep is. So as you can see with that, an important thing to note is that the volume does come on a little quicker than the normal Volume X. So you kind of have to be very careful to roll that beginning really slow. Then you'll be just fine. It's a small adjustment to make. It's not as bad as some of the other ones I've tried that were, to me, pretty close to being unusable in terms of how fast the volume came on at the beginning part of that sweep there. Alright, so next in the chain is the Strymon timeline. It's going to cover a lot of ground for me in this case. I did try another delay pedal, the Source Audio Nemesis there, and I don't like the way it changes presets. I don't like the way you have to store things in it. That process is very clunky, and it's not as nimble as I would like it to be for how I use delay. Alright, so next up in the chain is the Strymon timeline. For me, from a live settings standpoint, this is the best delay pedal there is to use playing live. I did try the Source Audio Nemesis in this place and did not like the way you had to save settings and try to make presets and store BPMs. It just wasn't intuitive, and from a live standpoint, from switching presets, I don't think it'd be very practical for me. So in the end, I went back to the timeline and just found a way to make this work on the board, and I'll set it up with basic quarter notes there. So and then dotted eighth. And then I'll probably make another bank with, so like maybe slap. Something like that, maybe a little bit even less time there, so maybe something like that, more like a country style thing. So probably something like that, which will work well for the kind of secular music that we're going to do, and then the quarters will be, you know, if I need to do anything that involves maybe some bluesier that little tail kind of thing. I'll set it up quarters for that. And then from the timeline, it goes into the New Neighbor Slate with the EXP controller, and I am highly impressed with this thing. So when I approach it from a worship standpoint, I'm going to have it from dark to bright, going from left to right. And the way this works is each of these is a different reverb setting, different reverb algorithm. So I have it set for the New Neighbor stock stereo wet algorithm here, the Grand Hall algorithm here, the Studio Plate algorithm here, and then Spring Reverb algorithm here. Within each algorithm, there's 2 presets to use. So for example, we'll go to the plate. Well, I'll run you through them real quick. So in this one, I'll have the green side of each algorithm be like the more tame reverb, and then as I move to the right for the preset under each algorithm, it'll get more affected, maybe a little brighter with a longer decay. So here we go. So that's the kind of stock setting. To the heavier affected setting. And move that into the Grand Hall. That was the more affected one. Turn that back into the tamer one. And then on to the Studio Plate. This one should be really bright This is like my Bethel style reverb with this one. And then on to the wetter one. So you can hear that's the breathy setting work really nicely for. Okay, and then last is the spring reverb setting, and that's going to be used for just the blues stuff. So. So that's the kind of rundown of the entire board there. Compressor, Angry Charlie, Morning Glory, volume pedal, delay, reverb. Pretty basic setup, but pretty versatile too. guys, so that's the mini board. Thanks for watching. If you have questions, please leave them in the comment section below. Always happy to help. GuitarforHISGLORY@gmail if you prefer email, and guitarforhisglory.com if you want to head over there. You can leave a comment there too, whatever your preference. I'm always happy to help you. Thanks again, guys, and just as always, keep the main thing the main thing. It's about Jesus Christ. It's about lifting His name high. The purpose of this board, again, is to go into prisons and minister to those guys and just pray for them, be with them as they're, walking in some tough times, show them the love of Christ, and then hopefully we watch Jesus and His Holy Spirit move and transform hearts and just love on people. So thanks again for watching, guys. We'll see you next time. Adios.